So as we're doing this herbal tea challenge, and the goal here is to get beginners into the world of herbalism through herbal teas. And for those of us already in herbalism, and maybe some of us have just forgotten the value of herbal teas, or maybe you're like I was many years ago, and you're in herbalism and you're making all your preparations, and herbal teas just seem boring. So I'm going to tell you what one of my teachers said to me long, long ago. She said, Heidi, don't discount the value of herbal teas. And it was at that point that I thought I wasn't a tea drinker way, way back in the day. And I always thought they tasted like yuck, like dirt. I guess. And I didn't have an appreciation for the flavors. And I think this is very typical in American or even modern society because our foods are so oversalted and oversweetened and overflavored. And we have forgotten what the plants taste like. So I did a challenge long ago and I decided I was going to drink tea every day for about a month. And it changed my life in terms of my appreciation for herbal teas. So that's what I hope for people in this challenge, or that, and also that you'll learn some new things. Because I know some of the things I shared, even just this morning, were, I think, eye openers for many of the participants. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about safety today. We're going to be talking about herbal quality, and we're going to talk about how to make a tea infusion. And I know those all sound a little boring, like maybe you already know it, but I think you're going to get some new information, and I have a present for you too. Herbal teas, like why herbal teas? First off, they're full of nutrition. They're full of value for our bodies. They're full of medicinal properties if we know how to harness those. They're just really, truly amazing plants. And I just love them now. And I can't even imagine not having herbal tea in my life. Herbal tea is considered like a food, basically, in mainstream society. But we all know that these plants have some amazing properties that can help us in so many different ways. There we go. Those are some very good reasons for drinking herbal tea. It's also a really easy way to get herbs into your life. And then finally, another thing I should mention here is some compounds aren't soluble in water. And they're soluble in other things. So we need to know that if we're looking for health benefits. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. If you don't know me, if you came here from outside of my community, I'm Heidi Villegas, and I'm the founder of Healing Harvest Homestead and the School of Botanical Arts and Sciences. And I became very passionate about teaching herbalism a few years ago. After decades of school teaching, I taught middle school and elementary school and also special ed for a while. And I ended up with some health problems, and we had some real serious liver issues, actually. A doctor gave me a big scare about that. Besides that, blood pressure and disc problems in my back. And I didn't do well on prescription drugs at all, or over-the-counter drugs. And I was taking pills all the time. So anyway, I got into herbalism as a desire to improve my health and wellness. And luckily, I was so desperate I didn't give up. And number two, I decided to really dive in and learn so that I could not only help myself, but help others. I just started making herbal preparations. They worked. I was amazed. They worked better than over-the-counter drugs. They worked amazingly well. The herbal tinctures were great, and I used to keep them in my purse, and they're easy to take. Roller bottles too, with essential oils, and the teas kind of got forgotten. And now that I know and have experienced and challenged myself with the herbal teas, they're definitely a daily part of my life. And I love to talk about herbs in general, but now we're talking about teas. But I love teaching people how to use the medicinal herbs to support their bodies and empower their health choices, to have more enjoyment in life, and to save money. Herbs can do all of these things, and it's amazing. I just told you I didn't used to like herbal teas. And so I think it's an acquired taste, especially if we're really stoked on the flavors in our processed foods these days. And it's natural for us as human beings who have grown used to something totally different, to maybe have to teach ourselves how to like something very natural, like an herbal tea. Again, today we're going to be talking about safety, identifying quality herbs, and then how to infuse a cup of tea. So we're going to go ahead and start off with safety. So there's a couple of aspects about safety that I'm going to share with you. But first, I'm going to show you some boxes of tea. And we don't buy teas from the store. We only buy bulk herbs and I blend them myself. That's the only tea we drink in our house. And that's the only tea I will ever give anybody. So I don't buy even loose leaf teas from places because why? I can do it myself. Joe went to the store this morning. I asked him to go pick up just some random boxes of tea. And so he did. He went to a good store and he actually picked up some brands that are considered decent and good. And I'm going to just share a little bit about what's in here for you. And then we're going to talk about the actual tea bags, okay? And then we're going to talk about the herbs, some of the herbs that are in here that are red flags for me as an herbalist, okay? So first off, we have a tea sampler here, and it says no artificial flavors, colors, or artificial preservatives. So you read that and your brain goes, oh, this must be a good tea, right? There's nothing artificial in here. If you look at the ingredients, I'm looking at the ingredients here. Here's what we have. We have chamomile, and in the lemon, this is actually a sampler pack. So here's what's in the chamomile. There's only chamomile. Hey, that's good. The question on that would be, how old is it? In the lemon ginger, it's hibiscus, orange peel, roasted chicory, rose hips, lemongrass, lemon peel. All good so far. Natural lemon flavor with other natural flavors. What does that even mean? Natural flavor with other natural flavors. So natural doesn't mean anything anymore, you guys. It's nothing. It's meaningless. Natural, in terms of what the food industry can put on their labels, is if they can create something in a lab synthetically, and as long as it's bioidentical to the actual natural chemical, they can call it natural, even though it's not. So that's a problem in my view. So when you see the word natural, it's meaningless. So just be aware of that. Then the honey, vanilla, chamomile. Here's what's in that one. Chamomile, orange peel, natural honey flavor with other natural flavors again. And natural honey flavor, why not just use the honey or molasses granules? And then after that, there's licorice and roasted chicory and lemongrass. Now, let me just say there are no contraindications on this box whatsoever. And licorice, if you're an herbalist, should be aware that it's one of those herbs that can trigger or aggravate high blood pressure. And we all react differently to things. So the typical average person does pretty well with licorice root. It's a sweetener in many of these commercial teas. Nowhere on this box does it talk about people with high blood pressure should take care and not use it, or be aware and make sure that you're in touch with how your body's feeling. So my body, I do have high blood pressure that I handle naturally, and I'm very aware of how my body's responding to things anymore. And I really try my hardest to keep my stress levels and everything in a good place, because that spikes your blood pressure. When I drink anything with licorice in it, boom, I can feel it. I can feel it in my head. My veins start pounding in my temples. So I know that is not an herb for me. Basically, you need to be aware of the ingredients. Always be an ingredient reader, you guys, for anything. And Candace says that honey vanilla chamomile used to be my favorite one years ago before I found you. And now we're making our own loose leaf teas. Hallelujah. Thanks, Candace. It's very true. Let's check the expiration date on this box. So this box of tea is slated to not be good after December 25th or 2025. So let's talk about production for a moment, and then I'm going to dive into the ingredients in these other teas as well. Herbs, think about the story of the life cycle of an herb, okay? It's grown somewhere, hopefully sustainably and without pesticides and all that other stuff. And by the way, if organic isn't on these boxes, you don't know, are there pesticides in it? Were chemical fertilizers used in them or on them, especially from like septic systems and sewage areas. You just don't know. So that's one thing. But the plants are grown and then they're harvested and then they're dried somewhere and then they're stored in bulk somewhere. And then they're shipped off somewhere to usually product creators or places that blend all these teas together. And they're usually huge, they're industries. It's industrial tea, basically. And the herb, by the time it gets packaged and put in the tea bags and put in the boxes and then shipped to the stores and put on the store shelves where they might sit for a year or two or more, these teas that we're looking at might be 4 years old for all we know. We're going to look at the actual herbal quality in a moment too, but so far it's not looking really great for these herbal teas. Now let's go ahead and look at this honey lemon ginseng, okay, herbal tea. So the ingredients in this are green tea and white tea. So good. We've got some Camellia sinensis, natural lemon and honey flavors with other natural flavors. Once again, we're dealing with something that's not natural, and it's the third ingredient, probably because green and white tea don't have much of a flavor, and they want to be sure to give people what their taste buds are aching for, which is a lot of sugar. Okay. So the sweeteners are right up top there. Then you've got eleuthero, which is their little nod at ginseng. Eleuthero is a ginseng, and it's a nice adaptogen, but heavens to Betsy, it's fourth on the list. And then we've got licorice again. And it's not mentioned anywhere that there are contraindications. And licorice is like right in the middle of the pack of the ingredients. And then we've got lemon, verbena, ginger, roasted chicory, ascorbic acid, Asian ginseng. So they've got the two types of ginseng. And Asian ginseng, by the way, is the one that's really helpful for energizing your body. Eleuthero is as well. It's not as powerful as the Asian ginseng. And that's the one that's helpful if you want to stoke your libido and other issues that sometimes have to do with energy. Look at these other ingredients: cane sugar, honey, and molasses. So this box is filled with sweeteners, and that's to make people happy. And again, let's look at the best by date. We are looking at, it says May of 2025. So once again, it's got another year, but how long is it really going to sit there on the shelf? I want to go over one last box with you for a moment. And this is considered a very good brand as well. And these ingredients, this one has, I'm not going to read them all to you, but natural flavor, natural orange essence, which who knows what that is. And once again, we have licorice root. So you can see, and no contraindications at all. This box is their best by date was April 17th of 2024. It's already passed. So I'm going to just venture to guess that this box of herbs here is probably several years old. Most herb companies will say that dried herbs have a 2-year shelf life. And I'm going to say that's not necessarily true. It depends on the quality of the herb, the harvest, the drying, how well it was stored throughout the life cycle of it, and also how far down it's ground. So here I've got, if you can see that, this is chamomile that came out of a tea bag, okay? And usually this is actually not looking too bad for a tea bag tea, because you've got little granules. In most tea bags, they're powdered so fine, you don't even know what it could be. Now, this one has a slight chamomile scent. I'm thinking it's definitely chamomile. This is chamomile from Egypt. That's a little bit old. It's not tremendously old. It's still going to have benefits. And this is the whole flower. And this is what I like to see, is the whole flower. And then this is chamomile from my garden last year. This is a year old, and it was freshly harvested, freshly picked, and it was stored properly. So here we've got these chamomiles. And I want to ask you, go ahead and put in the chat, which one would you like to use? 1, 2, or 3? Yeah, yours. Okay, definitely. So when you're buying your loose leaf herbs or when you're buying your herbs, I really love supporting the small family herb farmers. Like Reverie Farms is really good. Foster Farms Botanicals is another one. They're a medium-sized one. Other larger bulk herb suppliers can oftentimes have good products. You just have to search things out. Star West Botanicals I like for things that I can't purchase here in the United States or from the smaller farmers. And then Mountain Rose Herbs is another one. Pacific Botanicals is also really good. So there's a few that you can, jot down and think about. Now, really quickly, I want to talk about the tea bag itself. So here's a little bag of tea, and you can see that it's just a little square and it's all sealed up. It's pretty typical, right? But do you know what it's sealed up with? It's sealed up with PVC or plastic, a form of plastic. This is leaching into your body when you are drinking a cup of tea. All right. So if you're, and now they've got those fancy mesh pyramid tea holders or tea bags. They're beautiful, but they're plastic. And in my opinion, that's just not really the best thing to be using in your hot liquid where it's leaching out chemicals from the plastic. In fact, babies are now being born and they're finding microplastics in their system. It's things have been found in breast milk and everything else. So I think it's just a really good idea to avoid these kinds of things. If you're going to look for if you do want to buy box tea, which I'm not saying don't do that, if you really like box teas, but look for tea bags that are like this. Okay, so if I open this up, there's no plastic or PVC. It's just a little thin filter paper and it's got a little staple. All right. So you've got the metal going in there, but it's not very big. It's much better than the plastic one. Definitely, that's also something to consider. So we've got the quality of the herbs, we've got the quality of the tea bag as well. And then we've got the herbs themselves. Now, I wanted to talk about another herb that people have heard about. And this both cheers me on and also makes me go, oh no, because every single decade, there's like the herb of the moment, right? And this decade, we're hearing a lot about milk thistle. Milk thistle is a wonderful plant. It's exceptional. I think it's the best plant actually for your liver that you can find. It's just fabulous. So milk thistle, though, because it's become so popular as a liver supporting herb, now we're seeing it in the mainstream in terms of information. So what do people go to the store and look at the teas on the shelves? And they see milk thistle tea, they're going to think, oh, that's great for my liver. In fact, I was in a store a couple of weeks ago and saw one that said milk thistle tea, and it said supportive of the liver. And I was like, no. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, either this company is completely unethical and is lying to the consumer, or they don't know what they're talking about with the actual herbs. I don't know which it is, but I'll tell you about milk thistle. Milk thistle is not the main compound in milk thistle, which is filamentous, is not soluble in water at all. The molecule's too big. So it's not extracted in water. The best way, if you want to take milk thistle for your liver, is to just ingest it, eat it, get some seeds so you can see what they look like and you can smell them, and then grind them yourself and take a tablespoon a day and put it in a smoothie or put it in your cooking, but you want to ingest it. And that's the best way to get the liver supporting benefits of milk thistle into your body. It's not a tea. So just for kicks here, Joe Googled milk thistle tea this morning and found pages and pages and pages and pages of milk thistle teas for sale. All right. How do you feel about that? That's consumer trickery at its best, isn't it? it's it's craziness. I am going to go ahead now. We're going to move into how to infuse a cup of tea. And you guys probably already know how to do this. The directions are very common and are everywhere. But what I've got here is I've got a mug, and I love collecting mugs. Mugs are some of my favorite things to collect. I have a mason top jar lid here, and I've got my infuser. Now let's talk infusers for a moment. Infusers are pretty important. So you've got the little tea ball infusers, and I'm not really a fan of those because the herbs don't have a chance to unfurl. And this kind of an herb right here is really my favorite to use in loose leaf teas, the chunkier ones, the ones that are more like home dried, quote unquote. Definitely cut and sifted. If you're going to buy them from an herb shop, get them cut and sifted. And you want movement. The movement and the agitation and the warmth of the water is what helps the plant release its good chemical constituents into the water. So those little tea balls, they don't hold much tea, and the tea isn't allowed to open up and unfurl. This kind of an infuser, you're going to use 1 to 2 teaspoons is your typical amount for a pleasure cup of tea. Now, we're all individuals, and let's see, I'm going to use this tea up here. And we all like different things, but 2 teaspoons of tea is not very much. So I've got 1 teaspoon here, and I've got 1 teaspoon here. Now, if you think about this tea here, that's not 2 teaspoons, but it's also ground up. So you're going to use less of this. And then I like a heavy tea. So I'm actually going to add another teaspoon and another teaspoon because I just figure if I'm going to drink an herbal tea, I want it to taste good, but I also want it to be strong. So in this infuser, I've got about that much herbal tea, and that's plenty of space in here for the leaves to unfurl and to just release what they need to release for your body. Then you just put your infuser on top of your cup, pour your just boiled water in. And by the way, one of the reasons I used to not like herbal teas is because I didn't want to wait for the water to boil. I'm a type A personality, and I lack patience, and I didn't want to wait. And I didn't have a microwave. I don't have a microwave now. Basically, that was what happened. But these handy electrical water boilers are wonderful. Anyway, then you just put your mason jar lid on top, and you let it steep. You let it steep for 5 to 20 minutes for pleasure, or longer to taste. And I want to just say, in terms of taste, we're all individuals. I had some people just want the exact directions, but in herbalism, and this is a good thing, there really aren't any. And again, we're dealing with food herbs. So you can steep for a really long time for the most part, have a nice strong infusion if that's what you like, and it'll be fine. Another thing is you can steep for a lower amount of time and it'll be fine. And I've got some homework for you regarding that. I'm going to go ahead and put this tea away, let this steep a little bit, and I'm just going to make sure we've talked about solubility. Another thing I wanted to just mention before we move on here is I've got a present for you. It's in the Facebook group, and I'll try to get a way to get it in through email too. This is top 10 herbs and their actions. So in the big book of herbal tea, that's that course, the tea course is going to be coming with a huge list of 50 herbs and their herbal actions. And we're going to pick one in a moment here, and I'm going to just read through them and talk about those, what that means. But you're going to get this. So this is coming to you too. So let's take a look at ginger for a moment. Everybody knows about ginger, right? It's pretty common. And let's go ahead and read the actions. It's a stimulant. Now, ginger is not a stimulant like caffeine. It's a stimulant in terms of the fact that it helps to potentiate and activate the actions of other plants and even within itself. So ginger is a really helpful herb that way. It's a carminative, which means it's a digestive herb. It's really good for your GI tract. It's an antispasmodic, and an antispasmodic herb is one that tends to just relax the smooth muscle tissue in the body. So that would be tissues like your stomach tissue, your uterus, uterine cramping, things like that. So if you've got those kinds of spasms, ginger is wonderful. It's a rubefacient, so it's an herb that brings oxygen to the surface of the skin. It's a little bit diffusive, so that's nice. It's a diaphoretic, which means that it helps with fevers. And it's an emmenagogue, really helpful for women's reproductive support and the menstrual cramping. It has many other actions. Now, you might be wondering, I don't know what any of those words mean. So I'm going to just tell you, if you go to my website or just Google Healing Harvest Homestead separately, and then put glossary. I've got a glossary of herbal actions that you can print out, and that's going to give you the actions. And then I'm going to give you this, and it's got 10 herbs with their main primary actions. So that's going to be helpful for you too. When my students start working with herbal teas in the Confident Herbalist tribe or Ditch the Drugstore, wherever they're coming in from, they're usually pretty amazed. And some people are resistant at first, like I was. I'm not going to do herbal teas. I'm just going to do tinctures. But I want to just share some words from students here. Felicia says, my husband was skeptical, but he had trouble sleeping. I made him the relaxation tea, and it took 2 nights for him to notice a difference. Now he reminds me to make up big batches, so he always has it. I'm shocked at his reaction and so thankful for this knowledge. And I know when you start learning the herbs and about the herbal chemicals and the phytochemistry of them, like I just talked about the milk thistle with the silymarin and the licorice root not being good for people with hypertension. When you start knowing the plants, you can blend the most beautiful teas for yourself. Another student, this is Barbara, she says, I just started in Ditch the Drugstore, but I immediately made a daily tea from the book for my gastrointestinal issues, GI issues, and I have noticed a positive improvement each day. When I don't drink it, the problems are back. I was afraid I wouldn't like the flavor, but it's so mild, I love it. So there's another student. And then I got this comment from one of my students who's been studying with us for about 5 years now, and she's really amazing. But she says, this is Stephanie, I formulated a tea to help support my cholesterol. It tastes yummy and has the added benefit of helping to keep my cholesterol in check. I drink 16 ounces almost every day. So you can see, you can make some really beautiful herbal teas for deliciousness and pleasure and just enjoyment, but they can have really significant health benefits too. All right. Some people, I just want to say this too, that I think teas should be part of everybody's life. That's just an opinion I have. A lot of people, not a lot, I think, but some probably are like me, and I think they don't have time to enjoy a cup of tea every day. But with planning ahead and you can make large amounts. I didn't even talk about medicinal infusions, which require a longer steep time. You can read that in the big book of herbal tea, or I have a tea course coming out here in a minute. But I go deeply into tea of all ways. But I love herbal teas for beginning herbalists. They're really hard to hurt yourself with. You can't really hurt yourself with teas unless, like me with the licorice, you don't know something about a plant. But generally speaking, most of these herbs are food herbs and are just fine and well tolerated by most people. And then I want to just share that herbal teas give you an actual taste experience, okay, of the plant. These plants, and I want to make a suggestion here. If you decide that you want to start making your own blends and blending the herbs, be sure to experience each one of them separately first. Get a feel for the taste. What does it do in your mouth? Does it make your mouth pucker? Does it make the tissues in your mouth tighten up? Is it sweet? Is it bitter? What is that herb like? When you start getting used to the taste of the herbs, then you're going to find, and this is wonderful, you're not going to need all that sugar. You're not going to need all the garbage stuff that's going on. And then I want to just tell you this really quickly. And this is that the taste of the herbs give you clues to what the health benefits are in your body. So that's what our session is going to be about on Wednesday. We're going to go dive into the different flavors and tastes of the herbs and look at what that might indicate for as we drink these teas. Even if you're drinking a tea from a box, if those flavors can tell you something, although if they're heavily sweetened and flavored, you're not going to get. Never mind that I even said that. You really do need to plan on drinking good loose leaf teas. All right. Are there any questions before we sign off tonight? We had a lot of questions this morning. Oh, where do you get your bilberries? Oh, hey, Megan. Yeah, so bilberries are relatives of the elderberry plant. I just did a video on my YouTube channel. You might want to go over there and watch it. I shared a really great tea blend. It's beautiful. It tastes so good. It might be a good one for you to start off with if you're not used to tea flavors because it's just delicious. But I got those bilberries, I believe, from Pacific Botanicals. So you can check them. It was either Pacific or it was Foster Farms, but I think Star West has them, Mountain Rose has them. That's where you can look to get your bilberry, but they're so great. They're good for your eyes. This is a great question. How long do loose leaf teas last on the shelf? In terms of shelf life with your dried herbs, let's just talk about the enemies of herbs. It's light, it's heat, it's air, and moisture. All right. Exposure to those four things are going to degrade the tea and reduce the shelf life. So a lot really, as you can see, depends on the conditions that they're stored in. And most of these loose leaf teas, if they're commercial, you don't know how long they've been stored. I know, so I have a friend who's beginning to dabble in herbal teas. And okay, that's fine. But if we're dealing with our health, we want the best herbs we can get. And a lot of these loose leaf tea companies are also adding flavors. They're adding things that shouldn't be in there. So that's another thing. But the shelf life is just going to depend on how long teas have been harvested and exposed to the air, basically. If they've been stored correctly, most dried herbs will last about 2 years. If they're not stored correctly, they don't last that long. So you can see with the journey of herbal tea in boxes, the product that you're getting at the store is already probably degraded. I would say almost 100%. And as far as loose leaf teas from places, it's the same thing. I'm going to tell you a quick story that will illustrate this. When I first began learning herbalism, I lived in Las Vegas, Nevada, where I learned to forage there as well in the Mojave Desert. And Las Vegas is in the desert. We don't grow very much there. And although out in the desert, if you know what to look for, you can, I'm sure, forage out there for quite a lot of things. But anyway, I needed some plantain, and plantain is not one you find very often there, even in the mountains. So I ordered some from an herb shop, and I was waiting to get it, but I needed to get the plantain going for what I needed it for. So in Vegas at that time, there was an herb store, and I drove into Vegas and I went to this herb store and I bought some of their plantain and I took it home and I was using it. Then the next day, my plantain from the bulk herb shop came and I was horrified because I'm looking at the two plantains. The one from the herb shop in Vegas was brown. It was brown, and I realized it was lifeless because here was this beautiful plantain, bright green. You could smell the smell of the plant. And I just thought, wow, what a huge difference. And this was in a high reputable herb shop in our town. And the fact is that they weren't storing the herbs really well, or people weren't buying them fast enough, and they were still just selling old herbs. So anytime you buy loose leaf teas, if they're fresh and beautiful and they've just been done, a year or two, probably, depending on how old those herbs are. So I know I'm going on and on about that. But anyway. Where do you get most of your herbs for tea? Morgan, I end up buying most of my herbs, like I said, actually, let me just say this. I grow a lot of my own herbs. I have a really big medicinal herb garden at our property up on the hill. And I've just been working on that for years and years. And so I try to grow most of them if I can. I don't like harvesting roots though. So I do purchase my root herbs. I'm not really much of a root digger. I wish I was, but I've never been able to work a shovel very well. So unless I can get my husband to do it, I just figured I don't like to kill the plants either. So I'm a little weird that way. But I generally tend, if I have to buy my herbs, then I check with my close, like small herb farmers first. Like I said, I love Reverie Farms in Troy, Idaho. They're great. And she grows everything herself and she grows organically. And by the way, with your small farms, if they're very small, they may not be able to get an organic certification or it may be too expensive. And that's the case with Karen over in Troy, she's been trying very hard to get an organic certification, but the government's not working with her. She can't use the certified organic on her labeling. However, she grows organically. So that's another thing. When you can get to know the people who are selling the herbs and growing the herbs, then you're going to be able to make some really good choices about where you buy. But another one is Foster Farms Botanicals. They're really good. And we have a student coupon. If you're a student, if you didn't know that, ask me about that. And let's see. And I do like Pacific Botanicals. I also like Star West. So I'll order from any of those companies. Jacqueline said, I healed a broken foot with comfrey infused tea. Healed weeks earlier than doctor's prediction. Yes. Oh my goodness. There's such a big debate about comfrey. They contain something called pyrrolizidine alkaloids. And these alkaloids, scientists have decided are really bad for your liver. I just want to mention this because it's so important to understand the chemistry of the plants. First of all, there's about 100 or so, there's lots of different alkaloids. And many of them are toxic to the liver and some are not. Comfrey, it's becoming more well known now, has alkaloids that don't really harm the liver. In addition to that, whenever you use the whole plant, and this is so important to know, there are usually chemicals in the plant that offset the harsh action of the plant. And I believe that's the case with comfrey, the case with willow bark as well. So that's a whole other discussion for another day. We could go deeply into that. God made the plants perfectly. He made them perfectly and he made them for us for our health and wellness and our food. And so when we use them correctly, I think usually they're just fine. We just need to relearn that knowledge that we've all collectively lost on how to use these plants. Let's see here. Lisa says, how many cups per day? I'm leery about that one internally. I know, because herbalists will tell you for liability reasons, usually, just don't take it internally. But meanwhile, they do sometimes. So I have been known, and I'm not telling people to do this. I'm not making any suggestions. I am not a medical doctor in any way, shape, or form. And it's actually, I can't make suggestions for specific individuals legally unless we have a client herbalist relationship. I can provide ideas for where to go next. But when my stepmother broke her collarbone, okay, she called and asked me what she could do to help it. And I told her, I said, why don't you drink 1 to 3 cups of comfrey tea per day for 2 to 3 weeks and then stop. And the thing about comfrey is it contains another chemical called allantoin, and allantoin mends tissue together. There's no tomorrow. It's extremely helpful for damaged tissues in the body and for healing. So that's what I'll say about comfrey. And then in terms of the parts, I see somebody's asking about the leaf. I like to use the leaf, but the root is also very strong and powerful. Now, the root does contain more of those pyrrolizidine alkaloids than the leaf does. And by the way, the early spring leaves contain more pyrrolizidine alkaloids than a more mature leaf as well. So do you see all these things that are really helpful to know? It just helps when you're making choices about your herbs. Yeah, Morgan says, thank you. I'm working on building our medicinal garden, but I agree on digging the roots. There's a beautiful plant up here that grows in the wild called arrowleaf balsam root, and the roots are useful medicinally. And there's another one called Lamadium grayi. And I always promise myself every spring I'm going to get out there and dig them up, and I never do. And then I'm like, it's okay because I get to look at them the next year. Oh, Nicole says Reverie Farm is amazing. Their herbs are so fresh. They are. They're Reverie Farms, when you buy their herbs, it's pretty much like growing your own, honestly. And yeah, I turn to Karen's shop when I need something that I don't have growing myself. Okay, Kelly, nice. She's got a suggestion here. I've ordered a few things from Golden Hour Farm. Very nice and quality. I'm going to write that one down. Golden Hour Farm. Christine says, we have plantain growing like crazy here, but I'm afraid to use it as it's around our house, which is old, and I'm sure there's lead in it. Would it be okay to collect seeds to plant in beds or better to order seeds? I would just order them. They're not expensive and you can go ahead and order the actual, you could get the kind you want. If you want broadleaf or narrow leaf but I would order them. If you've got an old house, that's how we are here down in town. This house is almost 100 years old and I'm certain that there's stuff in the ground. Oh, nice. Jacqueline's got dandelion root in her dehydrator right now. All right. I hope I got all the questions and the comments. And thank you for being here, you guys. Sorry about the audio. It was a little rough here and there, but I'll have Joe get this cleaned up and we'll get the replay out. And if you want to listen to it again, you can. And I love you guys. And thank you so much for being here. And Wednesday, remember, we're going to come back at 10 o'clock Pacific time in the morning. And we're going to be talking about what the flavors of the teas tell us about the health benefits. It's probably not going to go as long as this session did. I hope this was helpful for you guys. I would love feedback if you're in the Facebook group or if you just want to write me an email and tell me what you thought. I'm always appreciative of feedback, both positive and critical. If you want to tell me what I can do better, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, you guys. Yes, Kelly, I will have the replay. Yes, I won't forget to record again. All right. Bye, you guys.